Welcome to session 15 of Coping with COVID-19. My name is Gerry Vassar, President, CEO of Lakeside.
And I'm Diane Wagenhals. I am the Program Director for Lakeside Global Institute.
Well, Diane, I think we've come to at least the last session of this series on coping with COVID-19. We've been talking about a lot of the emotional needs, a lot of the practical needs, a lot of the scenarios. And when you list all of this stuff out, it's pretty bleak, can be a little depressing to even talk about what's going on. And I think it's important that as we close this session, this series, that we thought that a good topic to close on is to talk about hope. I know that when I'm wondering, well, when will I go back to work? Yeah. When will this ever change? The new news that we might have to experience this again. Mm-hmm. When will there ever be a vaccination? Is there any medication that could help us with this? Is my family ever going to recover? Is my business ever going to recover? Am I ever going to recover? Am I going to get sick? Is what's going to happen to my relative? All these interesting questions. Yeah. And the cumulative effect of that could be that we've lost hope. It just feels like one big dark cloud after the next. It just keeps coming. I know it feels like the news every day. It's just pounding us with all the negative and difficult stories. And I appreciate all the positive ones. We're celebrating our medical professionals,
all the helpers.
And all that. But I think that in it all, there's this interesting possibility that we could lose hope.
And when you lose hope, what I think of is that you go to a place of despair.
Yeah. So then we get things like depression going on and all kinds of things to say, I'm really trapped, I have no power, I'm impotent, I'm not sure.
It's never going to change.
It's never going to change. And just when I thought life was going to get to a good place, the other shoe drops and we're in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah. So I think it's important that we ask about that hope resource for each of us. Mm-hmm. What do we reach to in the process? And I'm wondering what your thoughts about that are in terms of when we think about the need for hope, what are some of the things that we should be thinking about?
When I think about hope, and some of what I've observed, and maybe some of you have observed, is that there's been something almost beautiful that has come out of the tragedy and the despair and the fear and all those things we've talked about and other people have talked about, that speaks to the human resilience, mm-hmm. the ability that we have to, the whole, when life gives you lemons, make lemonades, which I know is a kind of a trite thing, but there's been, I notice kids riding bikes all over the place and people taking walks and having deep discussions. And I think we mentioned this in one of ours, how I know from, my grandchildren, my daughters talk about how they see sibling bonding that's going on. That part of the hope in this is that there's something inside of us as human beings that after we get past the grief and the anxiety, not that we get past all that, because that's going to be a long, long journey, but when we sort of come out of the fog, part of it, there's something to look forward to because we have found some of the things we can do, and we can believe then that there's more things that we can do.
So one thing that can give us hope is some of the unexpected positives that have happened in relationships and in our culture. I see this interesting unity in our country at so many levels where it felt like it was so much divisiveness. Yeah. And so that to me is hopeful because we've seen maybe a lasting effect on the positive side of unification.
We can hope that maybe there's going to be that. This makes me think of Sandy Bloom's self model, and she talks in there about self, which stands for safety, emotions, loss, and future. And that when we think about future, that we have a future. Mm-hmm. We can imagine that future. We have that power to do that.
So we can actually look beyond what we're in And based on what we have seen in history and time, there's going to be a day when we can have new capacity because of our resilience and because our expectation that, yes, one day we will find a way to deal with this pandemic and there will be a resolve.
Right.
So-
People think, we didn't see this coming. Well, of course not.
Right.
Well, some people think we saw it coming, but that's a whole other conversation. But I think we talked about this too, about if you go back in history about the times when how much people must have felt so hopeless when there were wars and there were other pandemics. My dad talked about having lived through the 1918 similar kind of pandemic, and was there hope then?
Right.
More fear than hope.
Right.
And yet, let's look at what's happened.
Absolutely.
We have a capacity to survive and eventually thrive, and eventually. So, if we use history as one of the things to give us hope, that can help.
What are some other things that come to your mind about that, about giving us hope?
Well, I guess when we're talking a bit about some of the words that connect for me. I think about trust. Can we trust ourselves to get through this? And as trust builds, that we are we're still here, we're still standing. I always come up with songs in my head. I'm still standing. But I think learning how to trust, and then another thing is to believe, to have faith. I mean, these are the things that we just, we talked on another segment about the importance of faith, that maybe there's some purposes we don't even understand, and to believe that we'll come away from all of this, that eventually it will get to a place that we're not sure exactly. Will there be a vaccine sometime? And it's like, okay, now we've got this, or what will it be?
Well, there's a little level of trust in that to say, do we trust even our medical folks to develop something in this? And I think the evidence looks very hopeful to me. There's going to be a vaccine. There are some positive medications that we believe might be effective as we do trials and test them. So there's a trust in some of the giftedness and some of the strengths that we have in our society that I believe are God-given, but also developed by our human. And then, of course, this idea of faith, that God is a God of love, and he's going to care for us and care for our planet, and he's going to care for our loved ones, and we're going to be able to gain strength from that. So.
One of the things I think of is that, I don't know what this sounds like, that we were living in a little bit of a bubble and were kind of spoiled before all this came. We really lived our lives maybe without recognizing the amazing gifts that we had, that we could go out and get in a car and go wherever we want and go walk around a mall, or hang out with friends, exchange hugs. And now we have, so maybe there's really important lessons to learn about gratitude in all of this too.
And simplicity.
Yeah.
Maybe the simple things that we took for granted aren't so simple.
Right.
Maybe they're really important, and maybe we'll value them differently when we begin to move forward.
And hope can live in the same space with some of the other things we've talked about.
Right.
It's something that's there for us to choose. I think we make a choice to be hopeful. And again, not minimizing all the other things that we've talked about and how important they are, but being able to hang on to this, hang on to the idea that we can have hope is really, it's a beautiful thing.
So I think it's that idea that beyond all of what we're experiencing, there can be new capacity.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it in faith, we've talked about it in giftedness, we've talked about it in relationship, we've talked about it in appreciating the simple.
Power.
We've talked, and we should be talking about it in our children as they adapt and grow through this. We often talk about also our resilience in understanding that maybe we had more than we thought we did in capability.
Yeah.
That maybe there's some resilience here
It's pushing
that we can demonstrate. And of course, the whole idea of how many times have we all survived, and in the process. And again, it's an amazing thing to see this operating. It's going to be even more amazing to see what's going to happen in the future.
And I just want to say thank you to the people who have watched. And, part of my hope is that you and I together, and there's so many people doing wonderful things, but that I hope that our series is giving people some hope and inspiring people in some ways. And I also want to thank you for sitting here and talking and engaging in this with me, and all that you've brought to that. That's been really special. And, behind the scenes, people that are doing some very wonderful things with this. So.
Well, I think we can acknowledge that Neil Thompson has been our good friend and supporter in this, and filming for us. We've shut down Lakeside for the pandemic, and I think that we felt like it was important for us to make a statement, to be able to meet needs that we see and relate to individuals in the midst of this, because we're sitting at home. So we launched off to do this. I think
many thanks to Lakeside for and Lakeside for doing
of our own accord, so that we can be a voice of hope and help.
You have to say thank you to Laurie.
Yes.
Schreckengus for all that she's done to.
Right. We have some behind the scenes help.
Zach Steele and some really cool people here that
have helped edit this and make this possible.
So that's like the credits that run at the end.
We should have credits. I want to thank you so much for joining us for the entire series. We hope that our parent series was helpful to parents, and that this particular series for the rest of the general world has been helpful. If you have any comments you'd like to make, certainly feel free to make those comments to us. You can look on our website, look at our blogs. You'll see Diane and I both writing there at lakesidelink.com. And we just thank you. We are full of hope about what will happen out of this pandemic. We wish you the best of health. We ask you to stay safe, and we want to thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank Diane for all of her expertise and willingness to share all of that with us and over this series. And we appreciate so much the opportunity to be with you. Thank you so much, and we wish you safety, health, and great hope throughout this pandemic.